Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I appreciate you joining us, and the feedback continues to be incredibly good. Thank you for paying attention. That means that we're shaking it up a little bit. We're bringing new people in. We're keeping the conversations going. But for me, it's an opportunity to be focused on leaders that are making a difference in the community. It's an opportunity to focus on things like teen suicide, which, as you know, is an issue that I'm very, very passionate about. SuperTalk is very passionate about. It's an opportunity to focus on things like healthcare in this state and the conversations that are happening around Medicaid and Medicaid expansion. These are important conversations our state needs to have, and I'm committed to having those conversations. But I really, really appreciate you paying close attention and coming back and commenting and sending notes. And we got such a long list of prospective future guests. It's pretty cool when you got a show that's kind of going forward like this show is, with a growing number of listeners. We're humbled to be here, and we're going to continue to have the conversations that we need to have. With that said, I want to invite my next guest in, and someone who I enjoy catching up with from time to time, my friend Ashley Edwards, who's an entrepreneur. He was a former CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, and someone I enjoy just kind of catching up with from time to time because he's extraordinarily well-read and someone that's fun to just sit and chat with. So look at this as me and Ashley sitting at a dinner table, and you just get to listen to the conversation. How you doing, Ashley?
I'm doing great, Ricky. Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to be on with you.
Well, you're a neighbor. You look out over Back Bay the same as I look out over Back Bay. You probably see, when you look out your back, you probably see us running by in our boats a little bit more these days as the weather clears up a little bit. We're able to get out a little bit, but we're lucky to be on Back Bay, man. It's a special place, isn't it?
Well, we're lucky to be on Back Bay. I tell you, it is a beautiful, beautiful spot. I will have a hard time ever being anywhere else. But I'll tell you, and your listeners will get a kick out of this. Out my back door and off my back porch, I can see your pier and your boat. And I always tell my wife when I see y'all out there going fishing, I say, I better go out there and fish, because if Ricky's out there fishing, the fish are biting. So now that's when I know to go out on the end of my pier and go see if I can catch something.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you something interesting. We were leaving a week ago Sunday to go tuna fishing at the Lumps off our coast. 76 miles from our pier, but obviously you got to go to the mouth of the bay, and by the time you go there and back, it's over 200 miles of running. But when we left, though, it was 5:30, and I had the spotlights on the boat, and we were just near your pier, and this family of otters was there, and they were frolicking in the water. Man, they got up next to the boat and played in the water as it came off of the boat and whatever. And we were just fascinated. We actually put the boat in neutral for a minute so we could watch them for a second. But, that's fun. You see when they come in and they torment us for a little while, then they disappear for weeks and weeks, and then they come back again. But that's one of the cool things about living on Back Bay, isn't it?
Well, the wildlife is incredible, and the way that it changes throughout the day and through the seasons. I so enjoy. You're an early riser, and I am too, and so we see a lot of sunrises here over the bay. And getting out there in the morning when it's still, and the pelicans that are everywhere, the bird wildlife that we see, and the diversity of species is incredible. And of course, as you well know, one of my favorite pastimes lately, I've got an AI video bird feeder in my yard that automatically records and classifies all the birds that come to the bird feeder. And I have had such an incredible time. And of course, I listen to your outdoor show every week. I'm a regular listener to that. And it really is amazing when you think about the place that we live. Somebody said to me the other day when my wife and I were taking a little vacation down the Caribbean, and he said, you guys are going to be going away to paradise for a little while. I said, no, I already live in paradise. I'm just going to be going to see another version of it for a few minutes. So,
isn't that true? Like we like getting away from time to time, but when we get back home, it's so special. There's no doubt about that. And you're right about the seasons changing, and the bird diversity that we see. Like the other day, I looked out, and there were 2 ducks a brown pelican and a white pelican all in the same frame. Just one brown and one white. Usually the whites come in a flock. They don't come in singular, singles, but you just never know what you're going to see. I mean, it can be so exciting, so diverse. But you're right. One of the reasons I love to do my outdoor show, I mean, it's a labor of love for me, for sure. But it's the opportunity to focus on Mississippi as the capital of the outdoors in America, the diverse landscapes that define us in this state, from the Mississippi Delta to the hills in northeast Mississippi to the coast and all points in between. We're so lucky to live here and have, some of the best wildlife and outdoor activities to be engaged in. And that's one of the reasons why I've been really focused on the commission, that I had, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission, because I think there's been a culture there that goes back a lot of years, not necessarily responsible, the current commission, not necessarily responsible for the culture that was developed. Certainly they have a responsibility to its citizens to observe open meeting laws and stuff like that. But for many, many years, a lot of their work's done kind of behind the scenes. And I've been really focused on, if you just have a conversation, it's not just about quorums and making decisions, but it's about having debates and discussions about things that should be discussed in the public trust. I've been really focused on us doing that because, see, I think some of our efforts are misguided as it relates to things like managing chronic wasting disease and things like this. But, in order to stay the capital of the outdoors, Ashley, you have to be willing to have the tough conversations when you think our state's going in the wrong direction. You're a former journalist. You have to be able to relate to some of what I'm saying.
Well, journalism is a difficult it's a difficult activity, and I was a newspaper journalist for many years. I was a writer on the business and the politics beat. And as my career went on, this was very early in my career, right during the time of college and immediately thereafter. It's tough, and it's tough to take adversarial positions against elected officials. There were a lot of mayors that when they saw me walking in City Hall, they were saying, y'all go lock the doors and bar this guy, because nobody likes accountability. It is human nature that people don't like to be held accountable. But when I look out my front door, I know when you look out your front door, what we see there is the reason for that accountability, because this is an incredible asset, and it is worth protecting, not just for us, but as you often say, for our children and for our children's children. And from that perspective, the people that put themselves in positions of power, whose job it is to protect these things, are naturally going to be held to account. And so in some ways, it's a don't blame the messenger. It's part of the process. And as I always tell people, just like a few days ago when I was on Gerard's show, we were talking about Medicaid. We get better outcomes when we have tough discussion and debate and disagreement, and when we don't exist in echo chambers, and when everyone is not on the same page. We get better outcomes because it is through that process of struggle that leadership emerges, that the process of compromise has to be built. And it is a hard built outcome. But oftentimes, the outcomes that come from debate and disagreement and struggle are better outcomes because they make people have to invest in it, and they make people have to feel uncomfortable and give ground when they don't want to. And so I salute you for the work you're doing. And I know and I think your listeners all know it takes a personal toll. It's not an easy thing. It's hard. It is easy to become lonely and out there in a situation when you're having to go after leadership. But on the same note, it is a necessary function. And part of the reason we have the problems that we have in our society today is because we don't have a robust network of local and state journalists anymore that are able to keep those accountability metrics in place. And so there again, it's tough, but it's necessary.
Well, listen, I would say that the skill set that I developed over a long career in the newspaper industry and 16 years as a publisher is a willingness to stand up for what I believe in. And, typically 50% is going to be happy with you and 50% is not going to be happy with you. And as I said to Gerard, I've been involved in some issues where, both sides were not happy with me because what we were proposing was somewhere in between. and they don't want that. In the case of the Wildlife Commission, the interesting point is from employees, from citizens that are close to this, to a lot of legislative leadership, and so on. They're not pushing back on me at all. Most of the pushback, frankly, is coming from the commission itself because they're not enjoying the focus. And the truth is, I would not have eventually gotten onto this had I not came to appreciate that some rich and powerful people were influencing the commission in a specific way. Whereas if you get 3 votes, that's all you need, could change the course of history for how we enjoy the outdoors in Mississippi. And I felt like we needed to really start to focus a little bit more on that. Too much of their work was behind the scenes, out of sight, out of mind, and we're going to bring it to the forefront. And I've only just begun. I have so much information, so much to talk about. I can't wait. Hey, when we come back, we're going to we'll have a conversation about the latest at X and AI development and what's going on in the political scene in America. Lots to talk about with Ashley. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. I have my friend Ashley Edwards. We're just talking about current events and what's happening these days. Listen, I have been, you and I have talked about advanced artificial intelligence and how it's really becoming sort of the backbone to just about everything. It was already the backbone to like our news feeds and Facebook, but it's becoming sort of the driver. And soon, as you well know, soon people won't even go Google something anymore. Everything's going to be done through AI. And speaking of Google, so fascinating to watch their launch of Gemini as sort of this woke virus, whatever you want to call it, has infiltrated the backbone, the building backbone, the instructions that this AI has been given, to give some of the answers that it's given, man. That's not going to be easy to fix, but that really speaks to the problem in big tech, that there is a bias in so much of what they're doing, and Google has just kind of like opened the kimono for us in a way that's going to be hard for them to fix now. What do you think about that?
No question. I mean, I think this is big news, and it's not at the top of my news feed every day. I'm not hearing about it. Of course, the 2024 election is such that it's hard to kind of get anything on anybody's radar other than that. But in many ways, I think that some of these discussions around big tech and AI are some of the most important things that we ought to be paying attention to. And it's something that I have become incredibly interested in. I think the last time I was on your show, I talked about the fact that so much of the last year of my life has been integrating AI into a systems-based backbone behind my business and entrepreneurial ventures. And I'm only starting to scratch the surface of the capabilities of AI. I tell people all the time when I talk about this stuff, I don't think the average person can even comprehend the type of technological revolution that this is leading to. And it's not a revolution that's 10 years out or 20 years out. 36 months from today, we are going to live in such a fundamentally different world as a result of AI and its capabilities. And behind the scenes, at every tech company in the world, the backbones that had been built on various algorithms and other types of technology platforms are quickly being replaced by AI. All of the investment in tech right now is being put towards AI and the way it's going to revolutionize everything. For a small business person like myself, it's important. I just look at the tasks on a day-to-day basis that I would have had to have human capital to do that are going to be replaced by AI. And it can be things as simple as, now I can get on a conference call for an hour, and rather than taking notes and writing an email to parties after the conference call to say, here are the things that everybody agreed to, and here are the things that are discussed, AI is listening to my conference call now. And the minute that I hang up that phone, it has a incredibly sophisticated, detailed list of all the things that were discussed, all the tasks and deliverables. It automatically knows the people on the various teams that are responsible for those tasks and deliverables, and sends them notes that says, here are the things that were discussed, and here are the notes from the call. And it happens in seconds. And that is just scratching the surface of the types of things it's going to do and the applications that it's going to have. And, 10 years from now, we're going to live in a world in which every piece of electronic or digital technology we have, from our refrigerators to our dishwashers to our, the systems that look at our health statistics and measure real-time data, are all going to be sitting on an AI backbone, making instantaneous conclusions about all sorts of things, and then using that to support the infrastructure around our lives. It is like the cotton gin moment, in that we are going to live in a fundamentally different world than we have ever lived in or could conceive of before. I don't think we can talk enough about the impacts this is going to have on our lives and our children's lives going forward.
Well, see, what's interesting, if you look at Chat GPT, which was an effort of a conglomerate, ultimately, OpenAI was once again Elon Musk, kind of brainchild, but brought all these really smart people into the room, and that's sort of the first iteration that so many of us have had focus on. And then, of course, Google tries to launch their own, and the rules and the algorithms that they're writing that enables it. It is so interesting to contrast the early reviews on their Gemini project, which is their AI, against what we're seeing on the OpenAI stuff. And I think Google's stock has tanked because of it. People don't want to see a bunch of rules that have woke virus or any other biases built in. You're going to have some bias just because of where they're pulling the sources from. But let me tell you how I use it, Ashley. When I write something, I write it, and then I research it, and I edit it, and I write it, and I set it aside for a little bit, and come back to it. When I get it where it's a final form, what I'll do is I'll put it, this is just one of many applications, incidentally, but I'll say, edit this, : and then I'll paste what I've written in there. Usually what it will do is it'll come back and it'll rewrite the whole thing. And then I'll usually say, no, don't rewrite it, just edit it. And then it will go in and say, it will say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to change it so dramatically, try this. And then it will and this is happening in microseconds, as you well know. But what it gives me as a result of the editing is the same thing I would have gotten going through layers of editors in my previous world, is some thoughts about, wait a minute, maybe I need to explore this area a little bit more. Maybe I need to go focus on this a little bit more. I don't like the way it put that, but I did like the way it put that. So I'm going to actually keep that part, and I'm going to throw out that part. But I'm literally having an editor relationship with Chat GPT. And what results is a much better product. It's a much better, because that, Roland Weeks said something to me early in my career. He said, it doesn't matter how many editors you have. At the end of the day, what you finalize is going to have your name on it, and you're either going to be proud of it or you're not. So my advice to you is the more editors, the better, because you're going to learn different perspectives. Your work product is going to be way better because you had people looking over your shoulder, making sure you're communicating as clearly as you can. Well, I don't have editors around me anymore, but I do have Chat GPT, and it's made me really strong. And I can't overstate how important that is, can I?
It's the efficiency is off the charts. And I mean, you think I just look at my life, my day-to-day business, and we're busy. I mean, we have so many things going on, and so capacity is always a problem. And in some cases, the things that I have AI assist with would take 2 or 3 human employees that I would have to pay salaries and manage and direct, and they can get sick and they work 8 hours a day. And AI is there for $30 a month, 24 hours a day, and its outputs are instantaneous. And every day I discover a new use of it. For example, there are a lot of times when we're doing work for small communities, cities, counties, on federal grant compliance or even grant writing. And, we have to go in and take a scope, or we have to take contract documents, and we have to then compare and contrast those against federal regulation. So normally that would take a sophisticated, well-trained grant administrator who would have to go sit down and read line by line the federal code, and then think about what they've read, look at contract documents and then try to go and intelligently flag areas where specific pieces of regulation haven't been followed or aren't addressed. And I can, through to a paragraph or two input into an AI system, I can say, take these specific sections of federal code, contrast it against this contract, flag any areas where there is non-compliance, suggest any additional areas based off the federal code that should be addressed. And within 30 seconds, that is done better than I could get a human being to do it after years of training. That is absolutely revolutionary. And I don't overstate the impact of that. I mean, it is revolutionary.
And it gives you the ability then to, instead of trying to build these things and hiring people to help you build them, it gives you then the ability to use your intellectual, capacity and your institutional knowledge that's focused on helping that community improve. That's where your attention can be. And so when you put all those things together, you create competitive advantage, and it's really neat to see that. But this notion around AI and building bias into AI answers is part of the problem we have with political polarization and disinformation in the world that we're in. And I don't care what platform you're on. And this is the thing that Elon Musk was so concerned about. I mean, Elon Musk said, you may not like free speech. The free speech may come in the form of good information and bad information and accurate information and disinformation. But the fact is, though, free speech is free speech. And what's so amazing to me about his transformation of X, which is hitting record numbers today from all around the world, is that he did it by slashing, all of that staff out. And he's built a platform that's just, as you and I have said many times, just the beginning of a super app. But it's amazing how good it's operating today. When we get back on the other side, I'm just kind of curious about what your perception of it is. We'll see more with Ashley Edwards when we come back on the other side. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend Ashley Edwards. He's a coastal Mississippi entrepreneur. He's former president and CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. He's also a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News as a column contributor. And he's just a smart guy, somebody I enjoy visiting with. But you heard my points about X. As I was saying during the break, for Instagram for me and Facebook for me is about communicating with family. Now, I post my shows there, and I do interact with listeners there. And incidentally, the growth of, like, for example, SuperTalk Outdoors on Facebook, we're engaging up to 30,000 people now, and the numbers are up, in the hundreds of percent. So it's an important platform for us. But in terms of getting the news and all that stuff, 100% X now. I've got sources from all around the world. I enjoy looking at the feedback. I like diving into certain comments to see what people say about that. You can dive as far as you want to go. What they've done with video is incredible, how quickly it loads, and you can see what's happening around the world there as well. I have I have my doubts sometimes about what I'm reading, but that's okay. Give it to me. I'll make a determination. I don't need somebody over here telling me I shouldn't see that. And that's what the problem was before. Elon Musk sort of kind of effortlessly got it moving in the right direction. It's amazing what it has become.
It is amazing, and I'm like you. I was never what I'd consider to be a real heavy social media user. I've never had an Instagram that I've used or anything like that. But I was very, very late to be an adopter of Twitter. I mean, I never, because I perceived that Twitter was just folks sort of, handing out quick tidbits of opinions and so forth. And it hasn't really been until the last couple of years that I got on Twitter, which is now X. And now it's gotten to the point that it has replaced other social media as being the only thing I look at. And, in some cases, I probably have a little too much access to it. I'm a little bit too much of a news junkie, a sports junkie. I like to follow the breaking news of what's going on. And so, I can get that right there and kind of scroll through my Twitter feed or my X feed and see immediately all the immediate things that are happening, what's trending, what's going on in the world. I'm a huge Braves fan, so I follow a lot of the Braves news and the list there. But But, here's the interesting thing about it. When I was in college, for example, which was, pre-social media, I was in late high school the very first time that I ever saw the internet. And so didn't even have a personal computer through my first several years of college. I didn't even have a personal computer that I could use or access the internet at home. And I remember in those days being a political science major and then with a journalism minor, incidentally, all of the discussion about how important it was for people to be informed. We now live in a world where there is no excuse not to be informed because it is always at our fingertips. I would actually argue people in some ways are less fully informed today than they used to be. And that is where you make the point about misinformation or disinformation. And I think sometimes the downside to this instantaneous access to all of this very specific and targeted breaking news information is we oftentimes are missing the big picture. And we're so susceptible to propaganda, to the individual talking points and data points. And look, you apply that to any issue in our world today. Take Medicaid expansion in Mississippi. These are complex, very, very difficult, intricate issues with a wide range of considerations. And people will often form the basis of their entire opinion about an issue based on one tidbit they've read that focuses on one small granular detail. And we do ourselves a disservice because we're no longer in a position that we're able to take a holistic look at an issue and form a difficult opinion based on a wide range of data points and information. And so in some ways, we live in the information age and we are collectively less informed than we've ever been because our ability to form an opinion has to fight through all of this misinformation and disinformation and echo chambers. And it's concerning to me. And honestly, sometimes I look around and say, how do we ever evolve out of this? I don't know how it's ever going to happen.
Hey, but that's so extraordinarily well said that we're shallow awareness, but we're just not deep in understanding. And I made that point with Gerard last Thursday when we talked about Medicaid expansion, that we have to take a holistic approach. We have to, just much as we did after Hurricane Katrina hit coastal Mississippi, we didn't have the option of just fixing something. We had to fix everything. And we had to build infrastructure that would enable us to grow in the future. And we had to build systems that were going to be stronger in case we get hit again, so we're more resilient. With Medicaid expansion, I think it's easier for some just to say, as you and I discussed before, it's the boogeyman, and just we can't do it. We're not going to do it for political reasons. It's a lot harder, frankly, to have the holistic approach because that means you have to get into the complexities of it. You have to understand, how did we get here? How does it apply to Mississippi? What are the specific issues in Mississippi? How many poor people are there in Mississippi? How many working poor people are there in Mississippi? Why are hospitals going to hell in a handbasket in Mississippi? We got to know all those things. It's easier to say, okay, we're just not going to have the conversation. For political reasons, we're not going to have the conversation. We've really got to do better. The other point I would say is that the propaganda piece of this bothers me. It's not just Twitter or X. It's really across lots of media. But how did we get to a point after the Ukraine war started where there's any normalizing at all of Putin? How did we get to a point where anything Putin is doing can be justified? That's what's amazing to me. You're beginning to see maybe these are made up accounts and all this other stuff around Ukraine's bad and Putin's good. But man, how did America get into a position where you actually have viable thought leaders in America who are normalizing someone like Putin? See, that's where technology is not good.
Well, it scares me to death. I think that topic is such a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about here. Because right now, depending on who you talk to, questions about things like funding for Ukraine are being put through no bigger filter than the 24-hour news cycle political battle, which means my team, my tribe killed Ukraine funding on the floor, which means we get a win in our column and they get a loss, and great, I'm happy with this. And there is no deeper thought about the long-term implications of stability in the world, of power dynamics. Look, I heard a commentator last night on one of the cable news channels who was making the point that the United States exists in an environment today where the world order is changing very, very quickly to the detriment of the U.S., and it is happening almost unrecognized by the American citizenry. And when you couple that with with everything being judged on, did we get the political win of the day versus what are the long-term implications of the decisions that we're making, we are doing such an incredible disservice. And there is such a lack of leadership. I often hear people say that we live in the post-truth world. And that is one of the scariest things to really think about and contemplate, because truth has always been a completely objective determination. And we now live in an era where we have our truth, my truth, your truth. It has become subjective. And the redefining of truth from objective to subjective is a failure of humanity, in my opinion.
It is a failure of humanity. And then you have a situation where America can't get aligned around supporting Ukraine, which seems so clear to me. And now you have NATO that's beginning to believe that they're not going to get the support from America the way that they need. And now they're actually talking about potentially committing troops to Ukraine, which is a statement to say, let's remind everybody why we were here to begin with. Now, we can argue about what they should have done before the war, and none of that actually even matters now. What matters now is where we are. And you give Putin a win in Ukraine, the implications to NATO are so significant, it's unbelievable. And we've got to figure out a way to put this madman at rest. It's a bad situation we find ourselves in. But boy, the role that social media is playing to mislead people in this part of the conversation, Ashley, is amazing to me. And again, it's like Medicaid expansion in Mississippi. It's easier just to be against it. It's easy just to say it's a boogeyman and we're going to be against it than to really understand the depths of why we need to have these conversations, whether we're talking about Medicaid expansion or Putin and many, many points in between. The role that information plays and our understanding of that information and the truth behind it, gosh, so critical. It's so critical. Anyway, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Ashley Edwards. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend Ashley Edwards, who's a coastal Mississippi entrepreneur, columnist for SuperTalk Mississippi News, former CEO and president of Coast Business Council, and someone I just enjoy checking in with. Gosh, Ashley, the national political scene right now, I don't think we've ever been more polarized. It's truly remarkable to watch, isn't it?
It's sad. It's really sad. And it's as bad as I've ever seen it. And look, we've gone through tough times in American history. There's no question. I mean, the civil rights era, the Vietnam era, the Jim Crow era. I mean, you think about the eras that we've been, the Civil War, for God's sakes. I mean, there are a lot of examples when the nation was very polarized. But the stakes are as high as they have ever been at this point. And there really are no off-ramps for people. I mean, the tribal mentality, the win-at-all-cost mentality, the ideals of statesmanship, of compromise, are completely absent from our world today. Someone who leads by compromise through coalition building is considered by today's political barometer to be weak, not strong. And that is such an antithesis to what has gotten us where we are as a great country. And I look at, I would not consider myself a MAGA person. I think it's no secret that I was active in Republican politics for most of my life. But the idea of making America great again, I don't believe that there is any such thing as American greatness that exists outside the bounds of finding shared vision and being able to work together to achieve common goals, because it is not us against them. We are all in this together, whether we like it or not. You know,
Yeah.
we don't get to go to our own state with closed borders that say that people that don't agree with us can't cross the border. We have to have a rising tide that lifts all our vessels, and we are just on a bullet train going in the other direction. And of course, you know, you look at this presidential election and what's happening. Michigan, the Michigan primary, you know, on both sides of the equation, the move by Rashida Tlaib and others to get the people to sort of protest against the Biden administration on behalf of the Palestinians by saying that they weren't committed when they went to the polls. The fact that Donald Trump continues to lose on average 30 to 40% of the Republican primary voters in these states. Not only are we divided as a country, even the individual political movements, the right is divided, the left is divided. And so divisiveness is the flavor of you know, the day, every day that we wake up now. And it's a tough thing.
And you look inside the Republican Party, great leadership coming from people like Henry Barber from Mississippi, you know, Haley's nephew, who is pushed to say, wait a minute, what Trump and his team are trying to do is basically take over the Republican Party and put their people in place as if they won already. And they may eventually win. But Henry is saying, why should we change everything about the way the Republican Party has done things and let it run its course first? And it's been great to see him speaking up. But you got this tug of war going on inside the Republican Party between the Trump people and the traditional Republicans, and it's fascinating to watch. You've got the same kind of tug of war that's happening similar in the Democratic Party, and then you got the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel and open borders that really are a major problem for America. Gosh, man, we got some work to do. But in the midst of all that, we got a Speaker of the House in Mississippi, Jason White, who's come in ready to work, and he's ready to have bipartisan conversations around things like Medicaid expansion. And you've got Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, who, thank God he won, to be honest with you, because he won against a guy in Chris McDaniel that would have been the ultimate divider. And so here is a lieutenant governor and a Speaker of the House that are working together to try to create bipartisan support around healthcare challenges that Mississippi's facing, and they're not doing as previous leaders have done to say we're just shutting the conversation down. We're not even going to have the conversation. That's, you know, in the midst of all this division and polarization, it's really good to see that Mississippi can still rise above all that and seek some kind of bipartisan solutions. That's good to see.
It's great to see. And, you know, I worked for Governor Barber as a staff member. I count those as the most formative years of my life. I was incredibly blessed to get to watch a true statesman at work. And, you know, keep in mind, during the early years of Governor, well, not just the early years, all the way through Governor Barber's administration, he had to deal with a divided state legislature where Democrats were in the majority. So every major policy initiative that he was able to pass, he had to work with people like Billy McCoy and Tim Ford, Democrat speakers of the House, to get those things done. And Mississippi was better for the fact that both sides had to come together and find common ground and lay a path forward. And we have disincentivized that in our world today. I really have a lot of respect for Speaker White. He's been very impressive. His leadership has been something to watch.
Yeah, no good solutions ever happened by making division and polarization your first line of defense. That's not good. Mississippi hopefully is moving in a different direction. I'm glad to see it myself. Hey, Ashley, it's been great to spend some time with you, my friend.
Ricky, it's always a pleasure, and keep up the good work. I enjoy listening to all your shows.
You bet, man. This has been Ashley Edwards. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.